and I'm honored to introduce Governor Wolf, who is fighting to make this happen and knows he needs the legislators to support them.
Thank you, Adam. You're right. The massacre in Texas this week was tragic. But even worse, it was not surprising. My heart breaks for the Uvalde community, for the children whose lives were cut far too short, for the families, for the friends, for the community members grieving this devastating loss. My heart breaks for them. Breaks for Pennsylvania, for Philadelphia, for York, for Reading, for Erie. These horrible attacks, despite the devastation it caused, was not an outlier. It wasn't the first school shooting in America. It wasn't even the deadliest school shooting in America. Too many communities here and across the nation have known the terror of mass shooting, and too many communities right here and across the nation deal with gun violence each and every day. Things that don't make headlines but happen, and that still leave fear, grief, heartbreak in its wake. Gun violence has become entrenched in our nation, and the fact that our legislators at the state and the national levels seem to be just fine with that, that's the greatest tragedy of them all. And that really makes me angry. I'm sad, but just like Adam, I am angry because this heartbreak does not have to happen. The deaths that we see here day in, day out, they don't have to happen. I have made reducing gun violence a top priority for years. And in 2019, I signed an executive order to reduce gun violence in Pennsylvania. My administration has invested more than $50 million in gun violence and prevention programs alone, and I've joined an agreement with New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York governors to share crime gun data. And these things, they've helped. But executive action isn't what's going to make it happen. But I will continue to do everything I can to bring peace to our communities. But what I really need, and what we all really need, is for our legislators to do their jobs, to pass some laws. Did you know that gun violence is now the #1 cause of death for children and teens in America? That's horrendous. That is unacceptable. And what's the Republican leadership in Pennsylvania doing about it? Nothing. That's right, nothing. They control the General Assembly. They control the laws that get passed in Pennsylvania. They huff and puff about how tough they are, right? But they would rather cave in cravenly to the gun manufacturing lobby than pass common sense legislation that would keep children from dying. For years, I've called for the Pennsylvania General Assembly to pass 4 common sense gun safety proposals that are widely popular all across the United States and in Pennsylvania. 1, we must report lost and stolen guns within 72 hours. What's the big deal? 2nd, let's close loopholes. We have background checks that we're supposed to do, and they have loopholes. Let's close those loopholes. 3rd, we ought to require the safe storage of guns, to keep them out of the wrong hands, prevent accidental injury. And finally, we ought to create red flag laws that protect those who may be a danger to themselves or others. These are 4 common sense things. These are not hard. At least do these things. These will not infringe on anybody's rights, anybody's constitutional rights. These laws would save lives. They would save our children's lives. And it is far past time for our legislative leaders to pass these bills. I know that the Democrats in the General Assembly understand the urgency of this issue. They tried to vote on gun safety legislation this week and got rebuffed by the Republican leadership. But when the safety of our children is on the line, doing nothing is absolutely unacceptable. So let's call on our leaders in the General Assembly and in Congress in Washington to take action to start preventing tragedy. Our message to our legislators needs to be, in Congress and in Pennsylvania's General Assembly. Do your jobs. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn things over to another champion of gun legislation, a champion trying to protect our children, Bilal Fayyoum. Bilal.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. And I want to announce all the brothers and sisters that are standing behind me are part of the struggle to reduce gun violence, not only in Philadelphia, but across the state. Quickly, Adam told me I can only be up here for 15 seconds. I walked to Harrisburg 15 years ago. You see this shirt? Jobs, not guns. It took me 6 days. And my goal was to increase the opportunities of creating more jobs for citizens of the state, particularly Philadelphia, and to push for free gun legislation. One was background checks. Two was lost and stolen. And the third was what we were pushing back then was you can only buy one gun a month. So you could buy 12 guns a year, but you only buy one a month. That's 15 years ago. Not a single one of those legislation has moved forward in Harrisburg. Not a single one. I want to tell you a quick story. When I was walking, I stayed overnight in hotels, stopped at this hotel right out of Reading, and I walked in and I saw all these white men, gray-haired white men. It was a mob of them. Now, I looked like I might fit in with them, so they didn't give me any time. When I got in there, it was the Shriners Gun Club. They were hosting a national conference right in the hotel I was in. So I got a chance to talk to a lot of them, because they saw the banner I had on the bus outside. And one of the things that after a 2-hour engagement with them, they agreed upon, and that is background checks need to be passed. Now, these were gun owners from the Shriners. They agreed. National polls have been taken about background checks, and a lot of the NRA members support it. So it's no excuse that we shouldn't get that support in Harrisburg. So today, when I'm getting ready to end now, today I asked the governor, was he be willing to call a special session of the House and the Senate, cross party lines, to deal with this gun issue, and he agreed to do that. So will you give him a round of applause? So all the senators, all the state reps behind me joined with the governor, and I know that our good friend Josh Shapiro would be up front with that as well. We got to push. This is a movement. We can't stop this movement to reduce killings in the city of Philadelphia. Since that walk I took 15 years ago, there's been 25,000 Philadelphians shot, 4,500 killed. Imagine guns legislation is not going to stop all the shooting. We all know that. But imagine if some movement was happening, we could have saved some lives going back 15 years ago. The next speaker is a good friend of mine who is a star, as far as I'm concerned, in the legislature. She's in a leadership position, and that is State Representative Joanne McClendon from Southwest Philly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We are here today with our clergy members, with our community activists, with civic leaders from the Pennsylvania Senate, the Pennsylvania House, from the United States House of Representatives, and we are here because we have heavy hearts, but we also have a made-up mind. And that made-up mind is that we've been waiting for way too long for people that work with us to do something about this crisis. I said on Wednesday morning, if we don't take out a mirror in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives and look at ourselves and see how complicit we are with inaction, it is a shame, it is a shame, it is a shame. But we are here today, and I told my colleagues on the floor of the House before we left on Wednesday, when they decided yet again that they would not vote on banning assault weapons, weapons of war, weapons you cannot use to go hunting even in rural Pennsylvania. And I let them know that as much as we sadly see gun violence in Philadelphia and in our area, that it's not a Philadelphia problem. It's also in Williamsport. It's also in York. It is also in Reading. It is also in Harrisburg City. It is also in Susquehanna Township. And it is in every part of the Commonwealth, even where they live and serve. In Butler Township, there was a mass shooting in a parking lot, but they refused to do anything. But we are here once again to sound the alarm. And as we sound the alarm, we think about all of the families who've been affected just this week alone. We think about all of our loved ones and neighbors and friends that we know who've been impacted by this ugly violence. And we are cognizant that as we go into our budget season, we have to ensure that every one of the programs necessary to do prevention, to do intervention is fully funded. But in addition to that, we have to also do everything within our power to reduce access to firearms. And as I wrap up, I just want to let everyone know that we can no longer have a Commonwealth where it's easier to get a driver's license than it's easier to get a gun and firearms than it is to get a driver's license. We need to do the background checks. We need to do lost and stolen. We need to ban these assault weapons. And finally and foremost, we have to ensure that every part of our law enforcement has the tools necessary. And with that, I'm thrilled to bring up another leader who I definitely have called in my time serving my community, saying, hey, folks, you need to get down to West Philly. And because of his hard work in the 18th district, we went a very long period without one homicide. Please bring up Pennsylvania's Attorney General, Josh Shapiro.
Thank you. Let me begin by thanking Leader McClinton, not just for the strong leadership she shows in Harrisburg, but for the spiritual guidance she gives to so many of us in this community. And in that vein, I want to thank you, Rabbi, for welcoming us here. It was not long ago, sadly, that we gathered here after Tree of Life. And in these horrible moments in our lives, I know we find comfort in one another here in this house of worship. So the rabbi, to the pastors, the priests, the imams who are with us, we are counting on you to lift up our community, and we thank you for being with us today. I come here today to say very clearly that it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Not in Uvalde, and not in Pittsburgh, and not on the streets of Philadelphia every single day. It doesn't have to be this way. We should not accept as normal when 19 of our babies and 2 of our prize teachers get gunned down. Every single child deserves to be safe in their schools and in their churches and in their movie theaters. Sadly, we've seen it here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In just the last year, 134 of our children killed, 113 of them homicides. I'm sick and tired of waiting. It's been 1,000 school shootings since Sandy Hook. It's been years since Tree of Life. And every hour that goes by after a shooting in Philadelphia or Hazleton or Reading or Harrisburg or Erie is an hour too long. I'm tired of waiting. It doesn't have to be this way. Our children deserve leaders of courage, leaders of character. Leaders who will do a damn thing about it. And now is the time. This is a moment where every leader needs to stand up and say what they are for. I'll start. We need to close the ghost gun loophole here in Pennsylvania. It's the weapon of choice for criminals. We've got to close that loophole. We need universal background checks because surely we can all agree that those who are criminals, those who are a threat to themselves and our society, should not be able to get their hands on guns. Surely we should agree on that. I'm for passing red flag laws so we can keep guns out of the hands of those who would do us harm. I'm for getting weapons of war off our streets. And I'm for dealing with the underlying issues that sometimes lead to violence. Our kids are struggling. We see the data. We hear their cries for help, and yet we do nothing. So I'm for putting a mental health counselor in every single school building in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our kids deserve to be heard and helped. Folks, there's a lot of power up here. A lot of elected officials, a lot of leaders of faith, a lot of community leaders. But I know each and every one of them would agree with me that the real power in this room is not up here, but indeed it's out there. Indeed it's out there. And I want you to know that I see you, I hear you, and I see your loved ones who can't be with us. And now is a moment for us to organize. Now is a moment for us to speak up. And now is a moment to vote. We have a choice this November. Are we going to try and finally make progress for our kids? Or are we going to inject more division and more deference to the gun lobby here in Pennsylvania? I know where I stand. I know where these good people stand. It is time for us to rise up and say enough here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You have the power. And I'm here today in this place of worship, this place of solemn reflection, and this place of community to say that we are all one in this fight. We are all bound together with determination and purpose to make our communities safer, to ensure that our children in their schools, in their places of worship, in their movie theaters can be safe. I'm committed to that work. These people behind me are committed to that work. And I am feeling hopeful knowing that each and every one of you are committed to that work as well. Thank you, and may God bless you and our children. Thank you.